knew that a non-region week of high school football could be so entertaining? It's usually the midway point, a little bit boring. Not this time. Hey again, everybody. This is the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. I'm Kyle Parmley, joined by Gary Lloyd. Gary, we are used to this midway point of the season being kind of a dull week, and man, we had anything but. We had so much stuff going on. But first, let's pop some sparkling grape juice or whatever for the Briarwood Christian School Lions. They're on the board. Briarwood gets a win. Everybody in our coverage area has a win now.
Yeah, and against Leeds, no less. So not just any win, but a really big win, maybe season-turning win for the Lions. So great job by that group Friday night.
Yeah, it was really great, especially in the way that they did it. They got down 14-0 early, and you thought, oh man, Briarwood just tough deal, and they just can't overcome it. But then they come roaring back. Luke Reynolds scores 3 touchdowns in the second half. It's great when you get your best player back, and I kind of made the comparison. You know, Luke Reynolds is Briarwood's best player on offense and on defense. So it's literally been like they've been without their best 2 players in the first few weeks trying to get him healthy. But great to see them get on the board. Even, like you said, a great win against a team like Leeds. Gary, before we dive into some more things, let me tell you about our friends at SYNLawn, the presenting sponsor of the Under the Lights podcast this fall. We're excited to tell you a little bit about them because they're your go-to for all things artificial turf. Whether you're looking to upgrade your backyard, create a pet-friendly space, enhance your golf game with a custom putting green, anything like that, SYNLawn has the solution for you. With top-notch installations for both residential and commercial use and wholesale turf sales, SYNLawn of Alabama is the premier choice for artificial turf in this state. Call 205-590-9549, or you can visit the showroom at 2018 Old Montgomery Highway. SYNLawn, artificial grass never looked more natural. All right, Gary, speaking of grass, we got to talk about this guy before we dive into the rest of our games. Ryan Williams. We saw him at Saraland, and this guy was unreal. And man, he sure does dance on the turf, doesn't he?
He is. I saw a question over the weekend. Maybe it was Monday. I don't know, but it was like, who's been the best like freshman receiver at Alabama? And I forget one of the names that was in it. Maybe, but you had Julio Jones in there. You had Ryan Williams, and I'm like, you know, in the past, that's an easy push, Julio Jones, and we're 4 games in, and I'm like, I'm about to vote on that poll, and my finger's kind of dangling, and I'm like, I don't know where to go because he seems like a guy that's going to break all sorts of records in his probably just 3 years in Tuscaloosa and end up on an NFL team before his 21st birthday, it seems like. Because I don't know if you heard this weekend, but Ryan Williams is 17.
Oh,
Not sure you
really?
knew that. Not sure you heard it. Maybe you did, but I heard it a time or two.
Yeah, no, it's been really great. We've seen him dominate throughout the years at Saraland, and even got to see him up close and personal against Clay Chalkville in last year's state championship. So it's awesome to see him thriving the way he is at Alabama as a freshman. And yeah, it's really cool when you see the guys that are the 5 stars coming out really live up to and even exceed the hype. But that guy's really good. Want to give him a little shout out before we get going because we've gotten to see him play a good bit over the years. All right, Gary, we got some games to dive into. We mentioned it. Briarwood 31, Leeds 14. Luke Reynolds with that big second half. This has got to feel good. I mean, I texted some of the guys after the game, and let me just say this. I don't think offensive coordinator Bobby Curley's job gets any harder when he's calling plays for Luke Reynolds.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to like we said, they were going to need all hands on deck. You need everybody healthy, and they were going to have to play, the best game they've played to date. And certainly in the second half, they did that. Luke goes for 168 yards, 3 touchdowns in the second half, and Briarwood honestly, just kind of ran away with it. And we've talked about that, how this was, it's an 0-5 team against a 5-0 Leeds team that's really good under Jerry Hood, and how, like we said, you're going to need all the bullets in your gun, but at the same time, we know what that home field advantage is like for Briarwood. It doesn't matter if a team there, if they're 0-5 or if they're 5-0, those people show up, and it's a tough place to play. And they made it a tough place to play for Leeds on Friday night. And you kind of wonder now, right in the middle of the season, a non-region week, is this really the pivot, the turning point for them to try to get to ultimately probably a 3-3 kind of region record and hope that it's enough to get you into the playoffs. So we'll see if that ends up the case. It doesn't get any easier. Now you turn around and play Corner, who's undefeated in 5A Region 5, but just an incredible win for Briarwood Friday against Leeds.
All right, the game that was I think the most high profile in the state, Clay Chalkville, 14-13 over Thompson in overtime. Thompson had a couple of chances. They had a field goal at the end of regulation that was missed, and then the missed extra point gives Clay the ultimate win. This is like the polar opposite of the game last year. It was offensive fireworks, teams going up and down the field, especially in the second half. This one was a true test of two great defenses, and lived up to it. It was 7-7 at the end of regulation, and Clay gets it done in overtime.
Yeah, and I mean, last year, like you said, had the offensive fireworks. Now this game had fireworks after the game. It was Thompson's homecoming, so there were fireworks going off, and I saw head coach Stuart Floyd's little post game, interviews after the game saying like it was nice of them to put this fireworks show on behalf of us, which was pretty funny. But what I came away with is just defense. That defense is elite, and just kind of the grit that not just this Clay Chalkville team, but various Clay Chalkville teams that we've seen throughout the years. There's some sort of grit factor there, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Coach Floyd has said, it's kind of the way these guys are raised out here. It's tough, not like in a malicious way, but he's like, he told me, he was like, these guys win a rec league game or something, they don't have a cupcake party after. They move on to the next game, and there's a certain mindset out there, and I don't know if the grittiness is coming from Goodner Mountain or from the waters of Cosby Lake, but wherever it's coming from, I would like some of it in my own life, because those guys, they're just really gritty, really tough. Nothing really seems to get to them up here. And they're just always kind of where their feet are. So they, like we saw, a team they can beat a Thompson team 36-33. They can go to Thompson and win 14-13 in overtime. So, ultimately the game means nothing in terms of playoffs, but you got to think it's just more confidence for a Clay Chalkville team that's, again, really good.
All right, the Under the Lights game of the week was not quite the classic thriller ESPN Classic type of game that we've got in the first 5 weeks, but that would diminish it a little bit, because Mountain Brook 27, Homewood 22 was still a really good ball game. I was out there for it. I got a couple of things I want to show you real quick. First of all, Homewood's band, I don't recall ever being around a band that like makes life miserable on the home team. But watch this clip of Homewood's band making life really difficult on Mountain Brook's offense. All right, so you've got that, and then it's also pouring down rain for the first half, which was equally miserable. The offenses were pretty slow in the first half. Chris Yeager, Mountain Brook's head coach, didn't really agree with me after the game that the game was played any differently, even though it was a slow start. But the Spartans, they get out 20-3, and Homewood didn't quit. Homewood had chances. They gave up a touchdown right at the end of the first half. Homewood's going to rue that one. They shouldn't have given up a touchdown like that on the 2-minute drill. And then Homewood recovered a fumble in the opening kickoff of the third quarter and can't capitalize. So you take both of those, you're just like, air's let out of the balloon. But Homewood didn't quit. And I'll tell you what, we talked to quarterback Will Myers last week on the podcast, and watching him play, that guy is tough. You get the you talk about quarterbacks and high levels of football. They need to slide. They need to do this. I don't think that guy knows how to slide other than into second base on the baseball field. Like that dude is, he's putting his head down. So, anyways,
Yeah.
it's a really good win for Mountain Brook. Homewood's biggest test of the year. They come up a little bit short. They get their first loss, but it's fun to see those two teams go after it.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask you, since you were there, we talked so much leading up to that game about, Homewood hasn't really been tested yet, and this would obviously be the first really big test. What did you come away learning about Homewood? Like what were kind of a couple key takeaways that you learned about
Well, I
them?
think they're gonna come away a little disappointed with their performance at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Homewood wasn't, Evan Osmer wasn't really able to get off, get rolling out of the backfield, and then on the other side, I mean, Mountain Brook just was able to run the ball all night long, um, and that's not to say it's not like Mountain Brook was getting 12 yards a carry, but Homewood wasn't able to create enough consistent push up front to really stop the running game. It's kind of one of those things where 4 or 5 yards a carry, boom, first down, first down, first down. So I think Homewood, not that they're not capable, but maybe that's like an eye opener. Like, hey, this is big boy football. Like this is the level that we have to play at against these types of teams if we want to beat them. So I do think Homewood, like they got a little bit, and even Coach Bergeson after the game gave me like a little offhand comment at the end, like maybe we needed to be humbled a little bit. So they're not gonna roll over because of this loss, but I do think they're gonna be able to show a lot of like, hey, this is what it takes to play against teams of this caliber and be a lot better for it. All
Makes
right.
sense.
Spain Park, 34, James Clemens 24. This is Spain Park's third 7A win of the year, which is more than they had a lot of years when they were a 7A team, for being honest. So now they're a 6A team, and they keep on rolling. They rally from an early deficit in this game, and Dakari Shanks had a big night, really willed this team to victory. We had Steve Irvine at the game covering, and he reported back that he was just so impressed with the demeanor of Spain Park. They got down early, didn't panic, just got back to work, and they ended up coming out on top against a pretty good James Clemens team.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down. The Dakari Shanks game. I
Yeah.
mean, I think a lot of us were maybe surprised throughout the state on Friday night. Like we knew that there was the potential for weather in places, but I think in some places there was a little surprise of maybe how much rain there was and how long it rained and that kind of thing. And it became evident across various games how important the run game was, and that was especially important for Spain Park. I think Brock Bradley only threw the ball like 15 times. Now he completed 9 passes, still threw for, I forget the number, maybe 170, something like that. Still threw 2 touchdown passes, but CJ Cowley goes out of the game hurt, and so Dakari was the only running back in the backfield there. So they really needed him in that second half, and kind of like we talked about last week, talking about a potential collision course in 6A region 3 with Spain Park and Chelsea both being undefeated. And we mentioned that this Spain Park James Clemens game seemed like, out of the games leading up to Spain Park Chelsea here in a couple weeks, that looked like maybe the toughest one. And you go on the road, like you said, at a tough previously undefeated 7A team in James Clemens, and you get the win by 10 points. So all things considered, that's a really good win and a good test for Spain Park. Good playoff type test, I think.
Yeah, like looking at the stats now, you mentioned Brock Bradley still ends up with 4 total touchdowns, 2 through the air, 2 on the ground. Dakari Shanks 26 for 150. That's a pretty good evening. So,
Yeah.
good on them. Yeah, Spain Park they've been really impressive, and I think they'll keep that up for a little while. All right. Another game involving the city of Hoover. Parker comes into the Hoover Met, beats Hoover 14-10. And it just seemed like, especially in the second half, Hoover's offense really struggled to come up with an answer for Parker's defense, especially, they've got 5-star DB Naeem Alford out there, and, he plays both ways for them and had a big impact on the game. But this Hoover team, man, they got a test from that Parker team that was not too happy losing last week or the week before against Carrollton, Georgia. And man, that to notch a 7A win over a 7A like top 5 team, that's That's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah, and then the way they beat them. I mean, like, I mean, credit to Hoover's defense a bit there too. But I mean, Parker held Hoover to what? I think I saw like 84 total yards and maybe somewhere around nothing in the second half, something like that. Maybe negative yardage in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, Hoover's only
Uh,
touchdown was a scoop and score in the third quarter.
yeah. So Parker showed up and said, after they had that game against Carrollton, which is, I mean, that team out of Georgia is just unbelievable.
Oh, sure.
They definitely got back to what they do, and anyone who had any doubt about what Parker was after a game against a team like that Central Carrollton team, they erased that at Hoover. So Hoover, I know they shot themselves in the foot a good bit in the first half, and they probably feel like they let a lot of chances get away in a game that was still ultimately really close. Just seemed like a wet slugfest out there, and if you're Hoover, I would imagine there's probably a lot of things you take from that game, and you get back to fundamentals and say, okay, we got to do this better, this better, this better, moving forward as you try to lock up a home playoff game as the 7A Region 3 games continue.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's run through a few more scores. Hewitt-Trussville beats Pinson Valley 59-7. Chelsea breezes past Paul Bryant 49-12. And John Carroll gets his second win of the year, beating Montevallo 27-7. That's all we got for week 6 from Under the Lights. This podcast presented by SYNLawn. All right, Gary, time for our interview segment. If you follow us on social media, which you should, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, we're all there. You'll know who the interview segment is, and if not, you're about to find out. So let's get right to it. All right, in today's Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn, we are glad to be joined by Clay Chalkville head coach Stuart Floyd. Coach Floyd, you guys had a big win over Thompson last Friday night. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how you guys were able to come out with another big win?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a big test for us. You know what competition you're getting when you play Thompson. They're just championship caliber program and have been for many years. So it's a definitely a measuring stick for us to see where we're at currently. And our kids were just excited about going over there and playing and being an underdog. According to everybody on AL.com and being picked for homecoming and a grand, spectacular fireworks show that was kind of pre-planned. So it was, definitely like the script was already written. And so our kids were just, they're excited to go over there and play. And it was an up and down game. Obviously the rain coming in was a factor, and the wind was pretty strong throughout that game. And it's a physical game when you play them for sure. And so just a lot of back and forth field position. We, started out with a pretty good opening drive. I think it was 18 plays, almost 10 minutes when we got done and scored. And then there was a lot of kind of back and forth from each team with the weather. And then we moved the ball pretty well, I thought, throughout the whole game. I think we almost had maybe 250, 300, I think 250 rushing. So anytime you run the ball for 250 yards on Thompson, it's a pretty good day. Not our best passing day, obviously. But, we got down there a couple times and didn't punch it in. And, I was probably, a little overzealous trying to put the game away instead of just taking the points. My inner Lane Kiffin came in and just, got stubborn and should have listened to some other people telling me we probably need to kick it. And, we didn't. And they obviously made some good stops and we let them hang around. And, I was going to be sick if we lost that game because I felt like I just would have given it away myself. We played well enough to win that, and for me to just be stupid and very very cavalier in those moments, I can't do that. So, but nonetheless, it's a good win. It doesn't mean anything for us on the grand scheme of things. Our kids know that Mountain Brook's a way more important game than playing Thompson to us.
Like, I mean, the rain, obviously, it seems like we're dealing with it every week this fall. I don't know why. I hope we're done with it. But how
Probably
big
global
are those?
warming.
There you go. How How big are those guys, Osley and Dobbs? How big have they been for you so far this year?
Woods, Joshua
Woods,
Woods.
sorry. Woods, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Man, I was like, if we have Josh Dobbs, that's pretty
No, you
good.
don't have Josh
That'd be
Dobbs,
awesome.
man. It's
That'd be
early.
cool.
It's early.
Yeah, they're good, man. I mean, you need a good 1-2 punch, and they're very complimentary of each other. One's more, maybe elusive and can move. One's more a little, I don't know, moves better, I guess. And Josh is straight up just power. He's well compact, put together back, but has a really good nose for the open air. And then if somebody happens to be in the air, then he'll just put his head down and try to run you over as well. So they're definitely like a little thunder lightning package for sure. And so we try, we know what each one of them do well. And then when you get them on the field at the same time, that's obviously a problem for a lot of people. And then, the quarterback can run as well. So that's kind of a three-headed monster when you get them all three back there.
Now tell me about you mentioned this big game against Mountain Brook coming up. How much different is it preparing for what Thompson gives you versus what Mountain Brook is gonna attack you with just their physicality and their ability to do all kinds of shifts on offense and how fundamentally sound they are? Just how much of a challenge and difference is it preparing for those two teams?
Yeah, Thompson is more of the skill. I wouldn't say they're not nearly as complex, on either side of the ball, but you're preparing for playing against really good players on both sides. A lot of collegiate players on both sides. Mountain Brook is more. It's orchestrated chaos, is what it is. And so you got to do a really, really good job in preparation, getting your kids ready. We spent a lot of time on both sides of just kind of orchestrating the scout teams to get them to simulate, all the movement they do on both sides of the ball. So there's a lot of time spent watching film with the scout teams on both sides, just to get them to kind of emulate the movements and the pace in which they move. Because it's just hard, all the shifting they do, and you got to be aligned right, or they'll make you pay if you get misaligned. So preparation, this is by far Mountain Brook's the hardest team to prepare for, just because of all the things that they do extra.
How are you kind of like one, how has Aaron Fry's development come along week to week, and how are you kind of getting him prepared for a Mountain Brook, kind of how you just talked about seeing the different things that he's going to see this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we've done throughout the season to kind of settle him in is we do a lot of blitz pickup, pass under pressure stuff with our one defense throughout fall camp. We do it probably once a week. One-on-one is just good, good versus good, and try to simulate pressure and the speed of the game for him so that he's comfortable in the pocket. And the biggest thing is you not getting your eyes on the pass rush. At the end of the day, he's got to watch, the second line, the third line, the secondary part, and just see the rotation and the movement of the safeties. And those are just indicators that kind of tell him where he needs to be working. And so that's the biggest thing is understanding, Mountain Brook, they have, pressures that are unique to them. And so being able to identify those kind of clues they give you as to what is coming is what we're working on.
So Mountain Brook paying a visit to Cougar Stadium this Friday night. Big alumni night planned, right? I mean, you're expecting to see a lot of old familiar faces.
Yeah, they've got we're doing a 25-year recognition for the '99 championship team, which was my high school team, and then the 10-year anniversary of the 2014 team, which obviously it was a part of that as well. So a lot of friendly faces, hopefully coming back to watch. It's a huge region game for us.
I saw y'all are now in the ESPN National Top 25. You cracked that. Is that is that a big deal to y'all? Do y'all care? How do you kind of look at accolades like that?
Just rat poison, man. No, I mean, it's good. It's good for our kids and our community to be recognized in there. But, I don't think it's not something that's unfamiliar for our school to be, to kind of be sniffing around in that top 50, top 25 area. We've done that 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years. So it's not something new. I think it's just part of, the kids they just expect that. But at the end of the day, no disrespect to you guys, but we know, these are writers that pick these things, and a lot of these, rankings are built on stars and those kind of, the high profile players. But at the end of the day, I mean, look, we were picked what, 6th or 7th to start the season in 6A, and somehow we've magically made it in the top 25 in the whole country. So that escalated pretty quickly. But no, as far as we're concerned, we're still number 7 in 6A.
Love it.
Because that's what we break it down on every day. We break it down on 7, just a little reminder that we're picked 7th. And so we thanked the Bama Preps guy for that and told him he was not allowed to move us up any higher than that.
Love that. So, Gary, just remember, when they say they don't pay attention to anything we say or post or write, it is very much there.
Our kids probably have no clue, but we coaches, we pay attention to those things. We're looking for anything, any edge.
Yeah. I got one more, Kyle, real quick.
Yeah.
Back on the alumni coming back, the 25 years since the 1999 team, 10 years since the 2014 team. How close could your 99 team keep it against that 2014 team?
Ooh, definitely different styles. Our defense in 99 was really, really good.
Yeah.
And I don't know how well Coach Talsman's defense in 14 would have handled the 99 offense. I don't know that he's ever played against a wing T team. So different time periods, just different styles of football at that time. But had a lot of good players really on both teams. Quarterbacks, I would say, were probably about the same, 99 and 14. No, they were not even close. Just the football in Alabama has changed a lot. Even within that 15-year period, man, it was just, everybody. I mean, there was only one team in 99 that I knew that ran the spread offense, and that was Pelham. And so, you fast forward 15 years and nobody even knows what the wing T is, and so it's just different time periods. But we have these conversations a lot, kids do, of could the 14 team beat the 23 team or 21 team or whatever, and those are never ending conversations. So, but they're good conversations.
Good stuff. Well, that's Coach Stuart Floyd. Clay Chalkville Cougars are they're rolling right now, and they're looking to keep it that way. Got a big game against Mountain Brook this week. Coach, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate the time.
Appreciate you guys.
Thanks to Coach Floyd for joining us. His Cougars have got another big test. That's how it rolls, man. But you get one big win, and you got another one to go get. So we'll see how the Cougars play against Mountain Brook this upcoming week. All right, Gary, time for our top performers here on the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. Last week, we had a run on running backs. I mean, you're always looking for different kind of avenues to pick players of the week, nominees type of stuff. But it was obvious these were running backs last week. So if you are following us on X at Underlights365, that's where you see our Player of the Week poll pop up late Friday night. You see it in the Saturday morning newsletter. Here's where you voted. You had 4 choices. Chelsea running back Chase Strasner. Seems like he's been on this list a couple times. 25 carries, 207 yards, and 3 touchdowns for the Hornets. We talked about Briarwood running back Luke Reynolds. He had 18 carries for 168 yards and 3 touchdowns. Mountain Brook running back Stuart Andrews, 30 carries on Friday night, 211 yards and a touchdown. And John Carroll running back John Ford. Haven't heard much from him this year on offense, but he had 41 carries, 214 yards, and a touchdown. All right, Gary, I need your drum roll. There it is. John Carroll's running back. John Ford is the week 6 player of the week. Congrats to him. Like I said, like John Carroll's been battling some injuries. He's been trying to figure out where to play guys. John Ford's guy, he plays in the defensive backfield as well. So kudos to him for those 41 carries. And I bet he's still icing up after that. But
yeah, I mean that was like a Derrick Henry game like last year at Alabama where he was getting like 40 carries a game. And yeah, I think I said it last week about somebody, but welcome to the show, John Ford.
yeah.
I mean, last name Ford, he played like a Mustang Friday night. That's an unbelievable stat line.
Or is it F-150? Just tough. Just running it right up the middle. All right. So there's your players of the week, top performers. Congrats to John Ford. This podcast brought to you by SYNLawn Alabama. All right, Gary. This week, what are we? Week 7? That's crazy. That doesn't even make sense. What do you think the game of the week should be?
I got a feeling you're going to be making a drive south.
You think I got to go to Alabaster for this one?
I think you're going to Alabaster. Just leave early if you're going the 65 route.
Yeah. Start walking now if you want to get to Warrior Stadium by game time on Friday night, because that's where I'll be. All right. The 5-1 Hewitt-Trussville Huskies paying a visit to Thompson. This is always a really big game in the region. We were kind of looking at it, the year-by-year results. This is a game since when did Thompson hit their kind of crescendo? 2017. That's kind of when the reign of power started. Since then, Hewitt has won one of these games, and it was probably the only one in all of this stretch that didn't actually matter. It was the regular season finale in 2019. Hewitt won like 35-29. It ruined Thompson's like undefeated season. Malachi Moore had a big pick 6 in that game. But other than that, Thompson has dominated this series. Hewitt's had a couple close calls. A couple years ago, they only lost by 2. They had their chances. But this is shaping up to be a good one. I mean, this is kind of this is a game where we've seen like 2 high-flying offenses come into it in the past. And the game's kind of shaped up a little in various ways, but this one is like, I mean, I think both of the defenses are going to be the showcase in this one. I don't see a ton of points, but the team that makes the fewest mistakes and takes care of the line of scrimmage, I think, will be the favorite here.
Totally agree. I think it's a grinder. I don't think this Hewitt-Trussville offense has really faced a defense, quite like Thompson's yet, and I'll be interested in, more than anything, in Hewitt-Trussville's quarterback play and what they do there. Noah Dobbins is the starter, and he's been good so far. But this Thompson defense is a different animal. And, Hewitt-Trussville got 4 different quarterbacks in the game against a really struggling Pinson Valley team, and all 4 scored in various ways. So I don't know if there will have to be some tricks up. I don't want to say tricks, but just some different looks that you want to give Thompson to try to keep that defense off balance. And then, like you said, I think they're going to have to be able to run the ball. And you've got guys who can do it: Deuce Austin, James Kelly, C.J. Davis, Noah Dobbins can run the ball really well at the quarterback position. So I think you're gonna have to find some new running lanes and some new plays to put enough points on the board. And Clay Chaltville showed that they could run the ball. So like you said, just need a really good crisp game up front, not turn the ball over, and see where you are at the end of this thing, and try to keep it close, getting into the latter stages of the game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We'll see how the game of the week will play out. All right. So let's run through the rest of the week 7 games here on the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. Let's go with the game you're going to, Gary. Mountain Brook, 4-2, heading to Clay Chaltville, 5-0 Cougars. These 2 teams don't meet in the regular season very often. They're region foes now. This is always a matchup that comes up in the playoffs. In the last 2 times they met in the playoffs, Clay Chaltville has been like the heavy favorite, and Mountain Brook has made them sweat it out. I mean, last year, Mountain Brook's like a 4th down conversion on the plus side of the field away from like, this game is in their hands, and Clay Chaltville barely held on. But I mean, it's another one just like this. Clay Chaltville is the superior team in terms of talent, but Mountain Brook is just so well coached. They know what they're doing. They know what they're good at, and they are going to make you work for it.
Yeah, that's what I can't wait to see. Having not seen Mountain Brook yet this year, I really want to see that ground game and see how Clay Chalkville's defense, which, like I mentioned earlier, has been absolutely elite. I think they're giving up 5 points per game now, and really, if you take away that Thompson touchdown, that was clearly not a touchdown, that was dropped in the end zone. It's even less. So I want to see if Mountain Brook can find some room to run for Stuart Andrews and quarterback Caden Hoffbauer. Can they move the chains? And that Clay Chalkville defense is just so fast, and that place is going to be juiced up. There have been some times throughout the years. Obviously, Clay Chalkville really good, where the atmosphere at home just isn't quite what you'd expect. But having so many former players and families back this Friday to honor their 1999 championship team and the 2014 championship team, I think the place is going to be juiced up, and I think these players on this current team are going to see those guys that came before them, and I think they're going to want to really show out for them. But if Mountain Brook can run the ball and keep that Clay Chalkville offense on the side and chew up a lot of clock, you never know. So looking forward to seeing how it turns out, and more than anything, really looking forward to seeing Mountain Brook for the first time this year.
All right, let's run through the rest of the games. Homewood at 5-1, hosting Gardendale. Homewood got to kind of pick themselves back up off the mat after this one. Gardendale looks like an improved team. They struggled last year, and they seem like they're back in kind of what you expect from a Gardendale team. So this is going to be a good test for Homewood to see if they can respond.
Yeah, I think this is a sneaky good game. Chad Eads has done a great job at Gardendale, and they've won 3 in a row. They're coming in with some confidence. Their only 2 losses are to Parker, and they lost to James Clemens by a touchdown in the season opener, like 17-10, something like that. So I'm expecting a really, really good competitive game here. This game the last few times has been a second round playoff game, and those games have not ended like necessarily as close games, but they've been on big stages.
Yeah.
And this is certainly a big stage in 6A Region 5, playing for playoff positioning and that kind of thing. So I'm expecting a really good game at Waldrop Friday.
All right, Briarwood in a must-win situation in terms of the playoff seeding in Class 5A Region 5. They're at Corner. Corner is really, really good right now. They've really come on strong starting last year, kind of kept that momentum going this year. But if Briarwood wants to hang on to some playoff hopes, they're going to have to win this one. Can they do it? I mean, this is it's a tall task, but I mean, based on the way they played last week, they're as good as anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Corner's really come on under Trent Campbell. Last year he leads them to a 10-2 record, and then off to a 5-0 start this year, and obviously then undefeated in the region as well. So you're going to need that repeat performance. You need to see strides again at quarterback. Charles Dedman and Braden Robertson have kind of split time a good bit this year. Luke Reynolds, stay healthy, that kind of thing. And I think Corner, they remind me, the little I've seen and read and looked at, they kind of remind me of Briarwood in a weird way, or each of them reminds me of each other, where, Corner's allowing 17 points a game. That's not like world beaters, and it's certainly not bad or anything. I don't see them as a team that really knocks you out and really pulls away. They just kind of beat you, and it's not 40-6. It's not 13-12. So I think Briarwood has a real shot to keep this game close. I don't know. It feels like a first 1-24 kind of game wins to me. Like I see a close game here for some reason. What do you kind of think?
I think it's a close game. I mean, it's gonna be tougher. This is a tough matchup, I think. But if Briarwood can parlay some of that momentum, and we've talked about it with like Vestavia. When you're dealing with high school guys, I mean, the psyche is a big part of the battle. And getting a win against a top 5 team in your class has to do a ton for the psyche of that group. So, yeah, we'll see if they can build on that. Big game this Friday. All right, Gary, we don't like to reveal games of the week too early, but if you've been paying attention, next week's could be pretty simple. Chelsea's 5-0 hosting Chilton County. Spain Park's 5-0 heading to Pelham. If both of these teams take care of business like they should, they'll both be 6-0 heading into next week, which makes it pretty obvious what that game will be. So, do you see any potential roadblocks for either one of these teams here?
No, I think the roadblock was, like we said last week, I think was James Clemens. Again, you never know.
Yeah.
Pelham has the ability to put up some points if you let them, if you're not on your toes there. But this Chelsea Chilton County game, Chilton County's got first year head coach Eddie Wall, and I think he's going to build something pretty good there in time. This is just year one. I think that's a growing community that really loves its football, but I think the ask here to come to Chelsea and get a region win against this running attack, this offense is probably too much to ask. Chilton County's allowing something like 34 points a game. So I expect Chelsea to put up another 40 spot and roll to a 6-0 start.
Well, we both got friends on that Chilton County coaching staff, so we might be getting plastered on the bulletin board, and maybe that makes a difference for them. We'll see. So, all right, let's talk about a couple of Class 7A Region 3 games. In addition to that Hewitt-Thompson game that we've talked about, Oak Mountain is paying a visit to Hoover. Gary, you got a little insight from head coach Shane McComb a few weeks ago about what the mindset is for the Eagles heading into these games against the upper echelon teams in the region. It seems like the Eagles have done a much, much better job at competing and finishing games. But against these big time teams, they're realistic about what to expect in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any fear there at all. I don't think they're scared. There's definitely a different mindset this year with this team. There's a lot more fight and there's a lot more production too. I think we've seen kind of leaps and bounds really. So I think if Hoover isn't really ready, they might get shocked early. I wouldn't be surprised if Oak Mountain, went down the field and scored or, something like that to start the game. Prattville did it against them a couple weeks ago. But ultimately, I think Hoover's got probably too many players, too much depth, that kind of thing. And it's weird to try to think about what Hoover, I don't want to say what they are, but what they are week to week, where you have that weird game against Hewitt-Trussville. The weather was atrocious. It's 8-7. The next week at home, you put up 40 on Prattville, and then you get Parker in the building, and your offense gets a field goal. So like they've played some different types of teams that like the consistency hasn't really been there, and that's a lot of who they've played and the weather too. Honestly, I think this is a game that they'll put up a lot of points. I think it comes down to Hoover's defense, really stopping Oak Mountain early and often, and I think ultimately the Bucks will win this one.
Yeah, I think so too. Vestavia Hills paying a visit to Prattville. Both teams coming off a bye week. This Rebels team, they played Thompson really tough 2 weeks ago, and just kind of let it slip with the turnover bug that it's kind of plagued them all year long. So 1-4 heading to 4-1. You usually kind of feel a certain type of way about that game, but I go into this game thinking, hey man, this one's up for grabs.
I think I think me and you are both kind of on record about these teams a little bit. I think this ultimately might end up your game that determines the 4 seed out of the region.
Yep.
This game being played at Wetumpka, with Prattville having some stadium renovation done at their home place. But, I think Vestavia, you got to be healthy. They've had some guys get banged up in recent weeks, and you've got to stop Prattville's running back, Tristan Blackman. I mean, he's the engine, he's the spark plug. He makes that offense go, and he is tough to bring down. So that front seven for Vestavia will really have to get him on the ground. Don't let him break free, and then just play solid, on the back end. Gavin Rigdon, their quarterback, he can fling it now. And then Vestavia, you've got to go down there and you got to score points, get on them early. And I just don't know. I don't have a read anyway on this game. I just hope it's a good one. I know it'll be competitive because I think these teams know what they're playing for in a game like this. And I wish it was up here because I would love to see this one up close and personal as well, because I think it has the potential to be a really good game.
And finally, 2-4, John Carroll hosting Winona. Winona's 4-1, playing really well, but this is only their third region game. So we'll see if the Cavs can compete in this one. All right, Gary. We've gotten down to the goal line stand. I have a question for you and put you on the spot. The fun thing about what we've got going on this year is almost all of our teams are still in legitimate playoff contention. We got two teams that have one win right now. Briarwood and Vestavia. Do either one of them make the playoffs? We're at the halfway point of the season. Past halfway if you're Briarwood, they're 1-5. Can one of them make the playoffs?
So you're just asking me a yes or no question.
Pretty much.
Can one of them make the playoffs? Yes. One of them can make the playoffs. Both of them could make the playoffs. I think one of them has maybe a slightly better chance than the other.
I think Vestavia makes the playoffs. I think Briarwood does if they win this Friday. Obviously, if they don't, I don't know what the math is like I think that's a 7-team region. I don't really know how that all shakes out, but it seems like they can't make it if they lose this Friday. But
I think Briarwood, you've got to shoot for that. You've got to win out region and finish 3-3 in the region, and then kind of see where you're at with potential tiebreakers or if those come into play. And then I'm looking at Vestavia. They're 1-2 in the region, and their next 2 region games are on the road. But Prattville's a winnable game. That should be a competitive, good game. At Oak Mountain, winnable game. At home against Tuscaloosa County, and then you finish at Hoover. So, I think the recipe is there for Vestavia Hills to potentially get to a 4-3 in the region. Maybe could also see them 3-4, and we'll see where it shakes out. But I think both are right there on that edge. So yes, both could make the region. They just can't afford any major slip ups.
all right. Well, if you need Gary or me this week, we'll be living and dying with the Braves. We've already done that earlier this week on Monday. That was one of the wildest first games ever, and then one of the most nervy second games ever. But the Braves made the playoffs for the 7th consecutive year, so we love that. We'll be sweating out.
Was that the longest you've ever been in a baseball stadium since we went to the doubleheader?
Maybe. It could be. I don't know. I have to go back and look.
It felt like I mentioned it to you yesterday. It felt like we were there for like 15 hours. It was a long day, but ultimately there was relief at the end of it. There was not joy, but there was relief.
There was relief, and thankfully they will not be playing on Friday. That has become an October tradition for me, is sweating out a Braves playoff game while trying to cover a high school football game. But the schedule works out to where that will not be a thing this time around, which I am very grateful for. But hey, big thanks to our friends at SYNLawn for presenting the podcast this fall. We always love talking high school football and having a good time with it in the process. All right, if you're not following us on social media, you need to do that. Look us up on Facebook at Under the Lights 365 on Instagram and TikTok, at Underlights 365 on X. And then you also need to find out what's all going on. Saturday morning's newsletter. Anything you missed, it's all there. So give us a follow, subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, wherever you listen to it on audio. Who knows, man? We got all these places to consume content, Gary. I don't know where to send people. Just follow everything and your life will be better for it. So, all right. That's this week's episode of the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. We'll be out at games on Friday night. Gary, we'll see you later.